My guests today are two of the hardest working people in the justice business and two of my very favorite people out there in the world. We've got Larry Klayman and Laura Loomer. And Laura, you, everybody knows, are one of the most, probably the most banned woman in the world. You've just announced a $3 billion lawsuit against Facebook alleging defamation. Laura, what are you going to do with the $3 billion?
Well, who knows how this is going to turn out and whether or not I will receive the $3 billion that's mentioned, of course, in the lawsuit that was filed today on my behalf by Larry Klayman. But of course, that's the figure for punitive damages, and Larry can explain that we came to that figure of $3 billion because punitive damages are assessed, of course, as 5% of a company's net worth, and Facebook is now worth $63 billion. Wow. They used to be worth more money, but of course, with all of the controversy and a lot of the legal issues they have found themselves in recently, because of their activities in censoring people and just a lot of the privacy issues, their net value has dropped, of course.
Laura's right, is that the 5% is 5% of $63 billion, and the reason for punitive damages, if we get a jury verdict, and we're hopeful that we will, is to punish the company enough that it won't repeat this behavior towards others. And just today, as you know, Jason and Laura, the Second Circuit in New York area found that the president could not censor content off of his Twitter. So what's good for the president is also good for Facebook. We have a very strong case, but this is about defamation. It doesn't fall within the context of the Communications Decency Act. It's not within the context of the contract that one has when one does business with Facebook. This is an independent action, and it goes around all of the defenses that Facebook would have to try to prevent our getting that jury verdict. We're in Palm Beach. We're in federal court there. This is Laura's home turf. This is her community. This is where you bring defamation actions. It's where you're hurt most, is where you live and where you work.
Yeah. Larry, I'm glad you brought up the Communications Decency Act, because this is a topic we've spoken about quite a bit. Each of us have been subjected to, ridicule, trolling, whatever you want to call it. But of course, this 1996 law, the CDA, and specifically Section 230, absolves these social media networks from any responsibility for content that's added to their network by outside users. But can you guys explain to us how Laura's suit differs from these and stays away from that very obsolete CDA 230 law?
The simple reason is that we're not talking about content that's been placed on Facebook by third parties. We're talking about defamation by Facebook directly into the media and into the public domain. Facebook defamed Laura by saying that she was a dangerous person and a Jewish terrorist.
Wow.
I mean, what could be worse? What could be worse than that? By doing that, not only did they harm her in terms of her personal reputation and goodwill, but also they harmed her business and they harmed her financially. And they also subjected her to great risk. She now has to travel with a security guard.
Wow.
Because there are Muslims out there, frankly, that would like to harm, if not kill, Laura at this point. And she needs protection. And by doing that, Facebook, ironically, who I sued years ago for furthering an intifada, this is many years back, even the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin, to take down a page put up by the Palestinians to kill Jews and Christians. Facebook, which is run by a self-hating Jew, Jeff Zuckerberg, who has little respect for his own people,
Mark Zuckerberg,
has in effect issued his own intifada against Laura. So this is a very powerful case, and $3 billion is probably a low figure compared to what they did.
Right. Well, I can tell you right now, Laura, in the comments, we've got I'm a Carrot asking if you have any need for a lazy, broke boyfriend. We could set that up offline if you'd like. But of course, despite the jokes, this is a very serious matter because, we've got the Council on American Islamic Relations meeting with some of the leaders of these social media channels and taking action against Laura while they're able to spread these messages like the one that you're talking about, Larry. Laura, what can you say about that?
Yeah, so a lot of people are quick to say that I'm a racist or a bigot or that I'm anti-Muslim, but none of the reporters who I've approached, and I've literally had reporters run away from me at some of these tech events in which I've been a speaker at, right? Some of these rallies or protests because they just don't want to have to address this issue head on, is the fact that in January, the Wall Street Journal reported that, like you said, CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is a designated Islamic terrorist organization, and its members were found during the Holy Land Foundation terrorism trial to have been supporting Hamas. They actually met with executives from Facebook and Twitter and asked them to ban me. And they're on the record admitting this. And the woman, her name is Zara Bilhu, who is in the Wall Street Journal article talking about this and confirming that CARE lobbied Facebook and Twitter to ban me and met behind the scenes with these officials to suppress my right to free speech and also, maliciously harm my business as a journalist in this country. Her tweets, if you look up her tweet history, she's openly called for jihad. She supports Sharia law. She said that she won't condemn Sharia or acts of jihad. So you may as well say, I'm not going to condemn acts of Islamic terrorism. And this is the woman who officials who work for Zuckerberg and Dorsey, and who knows, maybe even Zuckerberg and Dorsey themselves met with this terrorist sympathizer.
Wow. Yeah. And of course, she's in Congress. You've told us many times, Laura, about the explanatory memorandum that was recovered by the FBI, which details how jihadists planned to infiltrate Congress, to take over the United States from the inside out, and basically to establish an Islamic caliphate in North America. It's kind of amazing to me that people aren't concerned about this at all. And again, it seems like FreedomWatchUSA.org and Laura Loomer are among the only two entities that are actually fighting for justice. We would like to see the Department of Justice and Larry's old alma mater maybe do some antitrust actions against some of these companies. But certainly calling Laura a terrorist publicly is absolutely beyond the pale, and we definitely support Laura's lawsuit here. I do want to remind everyone that they can visit Laura's website, lauraloomer.us. And how can people financially support you now, Laura?
Well, people can go to my website, like you said, and go to the Support My Work tab. And the best way is either online at loomer.rev.co, or they can mail me a check. But also, Larry has been kind enough to take this case for me, and he's always given me very good legal advice and has offered to help me. And I would say not only is Larry Klayman a friend of mine, but he also really extends his legal expertise to many activists and conservative journalists in the community who may not be able to afford this. And so I would encourage people to support Freedom Watch and support Larry so that he can continue helping people like myself take legal action against these tech tyrants.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah,
this case in particular was brought, Jason, by the Klayman Law Group, PA, because justice matters. It wasn't brought by Freedom Watch, but Freedom Watch has done cases for many others, such as Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who was defamed by CNN and by the Huffington Post and by Rolling Stone. And in fact, there's a hearing in Washington, D.C. on July 25th, and you, both of my good friends and colleagues and clients, are invited to come to that hearing because Zuckerberg is just one aspect, and Facebook, of this discrimination against conservatives. Sheriff Arpaio was branded a felon when in fact he was just found liable for a simple misdemeanor by Chris Cuomo of CNN, by Jeff Zucker, the CEO of CNN, and by CNN itself, as well as Huffington Post and Rolling Stone. This is a very important case. We have a number of cases at Freedom Watch with regard to our leftist media strike force. Many people talk about the leftist media, Sean Hannity being one every single night, same monologue. In fact, Laura's asked to go on Hannity, and Laura Ingraham, and also with regard to Tucker Carlson. We'll see if Fox News has the guts to put her on. I hope they will. They tend to shy away from issues that are very strong, but I hope they will this time. She's written to them, I've written to them to do that, because the American people need to know that there are heroes like Laura out there. She's a true American hero. She's risking her life for what she believes in, for not just the Jewish people, but for Christians and everybody who are persecuted at the hands of these leftist media organizations. And now President Trump, is getting involved. And he today was found, like I said, by the Second Circuit to discriminate by removing people on his Twitter account. Well, if the Second Circuit can rule against him, then other courts can rule against Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, the whole lot of them. And it's time that everybody's treated equally here and that we have our First Amendment rights.
Yeah. Now, Larry, sorry, Laura, go ahead.
I mean, you have President Trump. He's the president of the most powerful country in the world. He's the most powerful leader, if not the most powerful person in the world. And he is being told by a judge that Twitter is a public forum and he's not allowed to block people who are probably telling him to kill himself, people who are saying really nasty, abusive things to him because it's a violation of their First Amendment right. So they're using that on the basis that President Trump is an elected official and public figure. Well, I'm also a public figure. And so is it not a violation of my First Amendment right for me to not be able to, as a journalist, participate in discussion in the public forum? I had to buy a separate phone because not only did Twitter ban me, but I cannot even access tweets on my phone. It used to be that you didn't even need a Twitter account in order to view tweets. So if somebody were to send me a tweet of the president or some other politician, you'd be able to view them even if you were banned. But now, not only is Twitter banning accounts, but they're also banning people's phone numbers and their IP address. And I could literally show you right now on my phone that I can't access Twitter. I had to buy another cell phone for the purpose of not having another account, right? Not having another account, but just for viewing them to do my job as a journalist, because so much takes place on social media in this day and age.
Wow. Now, Laura, we've spoken quite a bit about Devin Nunes suing Twitter, and of course, his lawyer seems to be displaying incompetence in the route that he's been going because he's basically banging his head against the brick wall of the CDA 230. We haven't really heard too much in the way of positive forward motion. But Larry, isn't it some sort of unfair business practice to go out of the way to block Laura's IP address so she can't even read tweets?
Well, it is. It goes beyond that. And of course, we have another lawsuit where Laura is also a plaintiff. That one is a Freedom Watch lawsuit, which is now up on appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, dealing with antitrust violations because all of these social media companies have come together. They're all leftists living in Silicon Valley, California, and they have colluded, also Seattle, Washington, I might add, in the case of Microsoft and Google, and they've all colluded to restrain trade by keeping conservatives off their sites, either in terms of advertising, shadow banning, all kinds of different acts of anti-competitive conduct, and as well as attempts to monopolize. They're an oligopoly. They're highly concentrated. And when Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, tells you that she thinks they should be broken up as well, then you know that, in fact, there's a real issue here. Not that I like much of what she says, but she's right about this one. They need to be broken up, and there needs to be competition, like when yours truly and others at the Justice Department in the late 70s broke up AT&T under the Nixon administration. That's why we have cell phones. That's why we have competition. That's why we have choices. And we need the same thing right now with regard to these left-leaning, politically motivated leftist media social companies.
So Larry, if you were in charge of an antitrust prosecution, what would you recommend? How do we resolve this? What's the best way to do it?
Well, we break them up, number one, make them diversify, sell off some of their assets. I mean, for instance, Facebook owns Instagram, okay, and Google owns YouTube. Let's break it up, have separate ownership. They should be significantly fined. And last but not least, they should be criminally prosecuted because the antitrust laws do provide for criminal prosecution. Generally, you proceed with the civil case before, the criminal case before you proceed with the civil case. So let's start with that. And, with all that's been going on, at least now that Jeff Sessions is no longer Attorney General of the United States, we now know that my former alma mater, the Antitrust Division of the Justice Department, is investigating this activity. I hope to meet with them. As we said before, Jason, I don't think they're going to bring any higher-ups accountable criminally like the Clintons or Obamas or Comey or the rest, but they can in their Antitrust Division, which has always been their most prestigious and most honest section of the Justice Department. They can take action there, and that's why, as a young lawyer, I wanted to work for the Antitrust Division. because
Right.
it does have a good reputation for integrity.
Now, Laura, you've got an article right now on lauraloomer.us in which you're telling us that Twitter and Facebook were not even invited to the social media summit. What's that all about?
Well, yes, correct. President Trump's White House is actually having a social media summit, and they're hosting, I guess some conservatives. I hear that about 250 people have been invited. I, of course, was not invited, which I find to be very strange, very odd, given that I am the most banned person in this country. But neither of the other banned individuals were invited as well. People like Alex Jones, Milo Yiannopoulos, Gavin McInnes, Roger Stone. There are many people who are more banned than a lot of the people, not majority of the people who have been invited. Most people who are attending haven't even been censored. They just see and they hear about censorship, but they themselves have not had their livelihoods taken from them. They have not been targeted by an Islamic terrorist organization in complicit nature by Facebook executives and Twitter executives. They have not been shut down by Chase Bank, right? They have not been banned by PayPal like I have. And so I don't know who was in charge of organizing the summit, but I hope that in the future they will also organize another summit to hear the concerns of actual deplatformed individuals like myself, not just people who, still have access to all their social media.
Let me say this too. When Facebook banned Laura and defamed her with their guidelines and their internal audits, you can read our complaint at larryclayman.com. larryclayman.com. They lumped her in with Alex Jones and others, Louis Farrakhan, if you can believe that. Okay, and that in itself is defamatory, to be lumped into that lot. And I don't want Laura equated with Alex Jones, Roger Stone, or Louis Farrakhan. Okay, for a number of different reasons. Laura has acted in a lawful fashion. She hasn't defamed anybody. She simply told the truth, and she's worlds above in terms of ethics, morality, and respecting the law than Roger Stone and Alex Jones. And I used to like Alex, but he's gone too far. He defamed my client, Jerry Corsi. He allowed Roger Stone to go in there and defame me. Alex Jones has lost it, okay? And in fact, there's several defamation lawsuits against him. Laura hasn't defamed anybody. And certainly she's not like Louis Farrakhan. She's not someone who is vehemently anti-Semitic. In fact, she's fighting against anti-Semitism. I'm not reflecting on Milo at all. I don't think he should have been banned at all. But those two I don't want her equated with.
Sure.
I don't personally think any of the banned people who were banned by Facebook, the conservatives, really deserve to be banned. I know that there are a lot of people who may not like, or they do like certain individuals who were banned, but I think it's really egregious how the rules are being implemented, right? So that if you look at the list of people who have been banned, regardless of what feelings people may have towards them, it's insane to me that terrorist organizations like Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, ISIS, Antifa, these people are allowed to have access to Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and they're not deemed dangerous individuals. But myself and others, like Milo or Gavin McInnes or whoever, have been deemed too dangerous for Facebook. And it just seems as if these companies are truly working to steal the presidential election in 2020, and that they're working to silence President Trump's most effective supporters online and the people who really brought a lot of people to the Republican Party in 2016 and 2015. So it's not like it's a conspiracy to say that either. I used to work for Project Veritas, and Project Veritas over the last couple of years has released very, damning exposés into many of these social media companies, whether it be Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, Google, okay? And you have executives on camera and senior officials within these companies admitting that they not only censor conservatives and they use algorithms to suppress conservative speech, but that they would spy on President Trump's DM messages if they could.
Whoa.
and turn the information over to get him removed from office. You have Google employees saying that they're doing everything to make sure that Trump or somebody like Trump can't get reelected. You have conservative speech and anti-abortion factual information being labeled as porn and blocked in censors. And now you have these whistleblowers. And now you have employees at Chase Bank caught on hidden camera saying that, well, of course, people like Laura Loomer and Enrique Tarrio and others have been shut down by Chase Bank because we don't give accounts to people who lack moral morality, or people who don't have moral behavior. That was a video. You can see it for yourself at projectveritas.com.
Do Bill or Hillary
here's the
Clinton
point.
hold
Let me
accounts at
interject here,
Chase?
okay, because- Jason, let me interject because when I
Sure.
agree with what Laura said, nobody should be censored unless they're advocating violence against
Right.
other people. And Laura has
Right.
never done that. Farrakhan has. Farrakhan advocated violence, for instance. I have two clients in Dallas who were killed by his disciple a couple years ago in that massacre of police officers there. So yes, those people should be banned. Okay, and if you defame somebody, say Alex Jones, for instance, then yeah, don't be censored, but you're going to be held accountable for that defamation in a court of
Right.
law. Laura has not defamed anyone, okay, and she simply told the truth.
Right.
And people don't want to hear that, too bad. And that's
Yeah.
why, Jason, we love you, because you allow us to tell the truth, crowdsource the truth. And that's why we've now put Fox News to the test, because Fox News has censored the truth as well. People like Laura, people like Sheriff Joe Arpaio, people like Judge Roy Moore, my client. You know, once the heat gets too hot in the kitchen, Sean Hannity and Fox News runs away from them. And they if they're going to keep their conservative constituency, and I helped create that in the 90s with the cases against the Clintons. I haven't been featured in the loudest voice in the room, but I certainly should have been with Matt Drudge and others, because we helped create that network. We deserve to be heard. Laura deserves to be heard, and they should put her on so the American people can hear it. For a long time, you haven't been able to say that Obama was anti-Israel because he's half Muslim. You weren't be able to say that Obama's birth certificate was fraudulent, regardless of where he was born. You weren't ever able to say that maybe Vince Foster was murdered rather than committed suicide. Fox News has not been a strong voice, and that's why we need you and we need others out there with integrity who tell the truth. And Laura's fighting that fight. I'm fighting that fight. Others are fighting that fight, my clients and others. You know, what we don't need is more documents. What we need is action. And that's the difference between Laura and a lot of public interest groups that crow about documents but don't do anything hardly at all other than put the documents, frame them, and put them on their wall and go on Fox News.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. It's, I think, very important that the First Amendment be maintained online, even by these private companies. They've grown to such massive size. They exceed the distribution of really any single newspaper, and they're with everyone all day. So for them to ban hate speech, or what they consider hate speech, and to do it so arbitrarily is a huge problem. I want to shift to a slightly different topic, something I've become very interested in, which is social engineering, where fake news and fake information is being used to try to sway public opinion. Now, back in March, both of you guys were on the show here, and we were talking about some of the work that Laura had done investigating Ilhan Omar and alleged violations of federal election laws and some of the things that she was doing with a home in Minnesota that seemed to be unoccupied. Now, after we did this show, in which Laura presented a lot of really strong evidence, there has been some activity in terms of investigating Representative Omar's past and how she's done all this stuff. But there was a social engineering campaign that opened up. I don't know if you guys saw this, but a duplicitous individual produced a video alleging that Laura and I, this guy was very careful in how he spoke about you, Larry, because I think he doesn't want to get sued, but he was alleging that Laura and I, speaking about Ilhan Omar, had somehow contributed to the New Zealand Christchurch mosque shooting, trying to create the impression, as Facebook has, that Laura's dangerous. What do you think about this?
Well, that's absurd. I mean, that would never hold up in a court of law. The fact that you raise the tenets of Islam, okay, and in Laura's case, Sharia law is part of it. The fact that Islam teaches to either kill infidels or to enslave them, okay, and make them pay high taxes. The fact that they persecute homosexuals. The fact that they persecute women. That doesn't make you a racist. It doesn't say that you're inciting any violence. You're simply telling the truth. Let the chips fall where they may. And in this country, unfortunately, as I said, in today's age, if you're Muslim, you have more rights than the rest of us, unfortunately, because you can play this race card. And I have a lot of friends who are Muslims who are good people. They've renounced Islam. They've now become Christian or Jewish or Zoroastrian or whatever. They don't want to have anything to do with that so-called religion, because I don't believe it's a religion. I believe it's a cult. It just simply does not teach peace, as Obama said. But that's my views, and I'm entitled to say that. And that doesn't mean that we're inciting violence. We're simply telling what we believe to be the case. We're entitled to our opinion, and that's not defamatory at all.
Right. Now, Laura, you were in Israel recently, and you were looking into this issue of apartheid. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I was in Israel, of course, and I try to go every year lately. And I did a video to dispel a lot of fake news about Israel, because one thing, and speaking of social engineering, I really got to see how the media social engineers a lot of hatred and animosity towards Jewish people and Israel. Last year, when I was in Israel for the embassy move, when, of course, President Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moved the United States Embassy to Jerusalem. And while Hamas terrorists were firing rockets and trying to break over the border fence, into the homes of innocent Jewish people, innocent Israelis, to murder them, and were calling for the killing of Jewish people and President Trump and the destruction of Israel. The media, of course, was portraying Israel as the aggressor and saying that 58 Palestinians who were killed during those riots were innocent people, when in fact one of the senior officials in Hamas came out and said that all of the 58 people who were killed were in fact members of Hamas, a terrorist organization. And so even though the entire place, the entire country of Israel was decked out in pro-Trump flags, and his face was plastered everywhere. They were literally selling yarmulkes with President Trump's face. People were in the streets waving American flags. There were Trump signs that said Trump's a friend of Zion. The media was not focusing on it. Okay, they were just focusing on the fact that Hamas was attacking innocent people, but they weren't, of course, framing it that way. It was, oh look, Israel's defending itself and they're killing innocent Palestinians, right? It was not the real narrative, which was, oh look, you have a terrorist organization trying to murder innocent people, and the IDF is defending Israel, just like every other country would defend itself if people were firing rockets, right? So I went to Israel last month, and I filmed more videos there and had discussions with people who live there. And the trip this year was really focused on border security and national security, to show how in Israel they've reduced illegal immigration by nearly 90%, and have cut back on a lot of terrorist activity by building walls, which of course is what we need to be doing here in the United States. But that's being strongly opposed because we literally have jihadists and communists serving in Congress now.
Yeah. And I've got the tweet up right here.
They've got a problem in Israel, Jason. I've got to run in a few minutes. I apologize. Sure. I would like to stay with Laura, but she can handle her own, believe me. But there is a new member of the Knesset by the name of Mai Golan, who I've communicated with over the years. A friend of mine over there knows her, and she's fought against this illegal immigration in South Tel Aviv, because all of these Eritreans from the rest of Africa are coming in. They're Muslim. They're killing people. They're raping people. She was just elected to the Knesset. Unfortunately, there's going to have to be a new election. She'll have to be reelected. Oh. But Laura should be in communication with her. You could be a good team.
I am. She's great. I've met her actually when she came to Florida a couple months ago, and she's really great. I think she's wonderful.
Great. You two are our dynamic duo on both sides of the ocean.
Well, Larry, thanks for your time today. I know you're very busy and you've got to go, but people can support your effort with Laura to sue Facebook by going to larryclayman.com. And of course, people who want to support some of the other legal actions being taken by Larry's group can visit freedomwatchusa.org. You can donate to support them financially. You can also read quite a bit about the cases that are active at Freedom Watch. You can view our recently published indictment of Robert Mueller in the Citizens Grand Jury, and there's a lot of valuable information there on freedomwatchusa.org. Thanks for joining us, Larry. I'll speak to you very soon.
You're welcome. God bless you both, and God keep you both safe.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Our God.
Yes, and we'll carry on with Laura. Laura, so what else do you expect to happen over the next several weeks and months as this case sort of starts to come to the fore?
Well, the battle for free speech and the battle to break up big tech is really starting to heat up in this country. I've been warning about this for over a year and a half, possibly even 2 years now. And I think now that it's really starting to affect very high-powered individuals and even President Trump himself, people are now finally giving this topic the attention it deserves. But if you recall, about a year ago when these tech executives were testifying in Congress where they perjured themselves, and of course they have not been held accountable for committing perjury, which is punishable by prison sentencing.
Right.
But clearly we don't want to hold the rich and the powerful and the famous accountable in this country anymore. I confronted Dorsey, and I made a personal plea to President Trump that went viral. And I said, President Trump, please help us before it's too late, because Jack Dorsey is trying to influence the election, to sway the election, to steal the election by colluding with the Democrats and shadow banning and censoring conservatives. And they censored me, they censored Milo, and I made the list of names, of course, and I even said that they censored President Trump, because if you recall, a Twitter employee deleted President Trump's Twitter account for 11 minutes last year. And of course, nothing was done about it. And it was just, so whatever. And now they're coming out with articles saying that Twitter is going to hide President Trump's tweets because they are a violation of the terms of service. And, I just want to know, what are they going to do? What are they going to do in the election? Are they just going to censor and list every single conservative politician's tweet as a violation of terms of service and hide them? I mean, this is real collusion. And the Democrats love entertaining their fantasy of Russian collusion and wasting millions of dollars of taxpayer money to carry on with their fan fiction, nonsense about Russian collusion in our election, because they just can't get over the fact that Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump.
Yeah. Now, Laura,
the real collusion that is taking place is the collusion between big tech and the Democrat Party.
I think you're right. You've orchestrated some really ingenious public relations efforts that have brought a lot of attention to what's going on. Recently, you actually went to Jack Dorsey's house. This was so clever, with a video projector, and you were projecting your message, I guess, onto his fence or his whatever it was. What went on here, and what was the result?
Yeah, so this was back at the end of April, of course, and I went to San Francisco, where Jack Dorsey lives, and he has a very expensive multi-million-dollar 2-bedroom place, which is, from what I'm told, the most expensive 2-bedroom house in San Francisco. And I rented a projector, and I projected the names of banned conservatives onto his wall at his mansion. And it was a silent protest. There was really no audio associated with it, with the video, but it was just images. Because what the leftists in Silicon Valley do is they accuse us of being fascists. They accuse us of being Nazis. But their behavior by banning and censoring everybody who they disagree with, who refuses to comply with their communist or jihadist agenda, is a classic act of projection. And so I thought, what better way to project this message than to project it onto the home of Dorsey? I don't know if you remember, but when I handcuffed myself to Twitter last year, when I was permanently banned off of Twitter, the Rolling Stone magazine interviewed Jack Dorsey and said, so, I'm sure you heard about Laura Loomer handcuffing herself to Twitter. What do you think about it? And he said, oh, well, I actually respect it. I like the fact that she's trying to make Twitter a better place, and I think it's actually really punk rock, and I respect that she has the drive to protest. And you can look it up. I have a copy of the Rolling Stone magazine here on my bookshelf so that I can frame it someday and show everybody that those were his words. Because if he respects protest so much, well, then what better place to protest than Jack Dorsey's home?
Absolutely.
Since I have been denied access to the digital public square, why not make Jack Dorsey's wall my personal social media wall, right?
Absolutely. He said a lot of stuff that's just total lip service. I think it was in Congress when he said that social media is everybody's right, but yet he's denying your right. And in a public forum like Rolling Stone magazine, where millions of people will see that, he seems like a really reasonable, nice guy. But has he emailed you? Have they reinstated your Twitter account? Have they?
No.
Right.
And he knows who I am, and he knows about all of this stuff. And I know that he was inside his house when I protested, because I read this interview where they said that Jack Dorsey walks to work every single day. And on Tuesdays, he works from home. And on Monday is when he has a lot of his meetings. And so I believe the day that I had protested was on a Tuesday when he was working from home. And when I was broadcasting, I was actually live streaming this from the Laura Loomer fan club account. And when I was live streaming it, they banned the Laura Loomer fan account from Twitter, and they also banned it from Periscope and banned me from Periscope. And
Wow.
so it was literally censored in live time at Jack Dorsey's house while I was live posting in real time on his wall, making his wall my personal social media wall, because he loves the fact that I protest and stand up to make Twitter a better place. I mean, the hypocrisy is just
Unbelievable.
it's just.
Well, I mean, he's got to be doing that himself in his house. He's the CEO of the company. I'm sure he can log in and make whatever kind of changes he wants on the fly. So it's just like he's like this like James Bond villain in there, just like boop, deleting your protest. People who are missing hearing from Laura on Periscope can subscribe to her YouTube channel. If you just go onto YouTube and search for Laura Loomer, she's growing very nicely on there, 85,000 subscribers, and Laura's been producing some really excellent videos, great production quality. Laura's a little less focused on live streaming, and she's doing more sort of produced segments along the lines of what you might expect from, 60 Minutes kind of classic style, going somewhere, getting in depth, doing your research, and then putting together the video. I really would encourage people to go check out Laura's YouTube channel. And Laura, are you still able to operate on Patreon?
I think that Patreon still allows me to use it. I don't know. I mean, I don't really.
Not a platform you focus on.
As much as,
Right.
others, because for a while people were telling me they were having issues with Patreon and having issues with my Patreon, and I just know that whenever I try to use a lot of these platforms, they shut me down anyway. And so I've been trying to really focus on becoming independent of a lot of these, left-leaning tech companies, and relying on my own infrastructure with my website. And so for people who do want to donate to me, they can go to loomer.rev.co, because it's just so devastating to your business structure and also your work as a journalist when you rely on something and then it's taken away from you or you're banned, and then that's it, right? And so I've really been trying to bring people over to my website. I have a byline on Drudge Report now.
Wow.
And people can donate to me at loomer.rev.co, where I'm not going to be shut down. And so, I encourage a lot of people to do this, because unfortunately that's why they ban me on PayPal and Venmo and GoFundMe. It's because they want to harm me financially. And ultimately, that's why they wanted to ban me probably elsewhere too, because as a journalist, and this is how we make our living, is by producing content. And my content was very viral. My YouTube channel isn't monetized. I mean, YouTube doesn't really allow me to monetize. And so I don't make money off my videos, but I make my videos kind of these elaborate productions, that are educational forms of protest and activism to highlight the hypocrisy and expose a lot of these people. And so I also have been really expanding my news site, lauraloomer.us, and using it as a place to document a lot of the censorship. And I've given a voice to some of the independent journalists who have been banned themselves or have faced censorship. And so your donations not only go to support my work, but they also go to provide jobs to other independent journalists who are producing investigative journalism and documenting the censorship war in real time. And so, every single day, you can go to my site, lauraloomer.us, and get really interesting articles and information that the mainstream media isn't necessarily talking about. A lot of it's political news, a lot of it documents anti-Semitism, Islamic terrorism, tech censorship, but it is very useful information.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Laura, because there are people who are, committing rape and lying to Congress and selling our military secrets to the Chinese and doing all kinds of terrible things, but they seem to be able to own mansions and write books and fly around the world and do speaking engagements, and you are simply putting out facts, news, sometimes opinions, but they seem to be clamping down on you with a life sentence in terms of your financial well-being. That is no judge, no jury, no right to defend yourself or appeal any of this stuff. People are saying that you and I should team up. I think that we have been teamed up for basically as long as we've known each other.
Yeah, we have, and I love coming on your show. And I always come on when I can. I travel a lot, and I'm constantly working, and so a lot of times when you ask me to come on, I can't always do it. But I'm constantly working, and people may say, "Oh, well, you're not Loomering as many people anymore." Well, yeah, when your entire business is bulldozed by the most powerful and richest people in the world who have control over the internet, you have to start from scratch. So I've been working my ass off behind the scenes to really build up my website and make it a quality news site, and also to really challenge and document a lot of the censorship. And I now have a byline on Drudge, so that's a good accomplishment as well, right underneath Rush Limbaugh. And
Wow.
I've been raising awareness and really kind of lobbying. When I say lobbying, advocating for all of the banned and censored individuals on my own time to try to interject these points so that members of Congress and government officials talk about it. I prepared a briefing that I know was sent to the White House documenting a lot of the censorship of certain people. And so I know that there are people, whether they want to publicly recognize me or not, who are using the information and the packets that I've put together outlining the censorship. And I am confident that my lawsuit and the work that I've been doing will pay off. And it is, because really nobody was really talking about tech censorship in the mainstream media until I handcuffed myself to Twitter. And as the inventor of the Stop the Bias movement, the official hashtag of censorship online, President Trump has even tweeted the hashtag, right? So I'm making progress, and someday I will be vindicated.
I think that's true, and I'm really actually quite pleased to hear about this lawsuit that Larry has brought on your behalf. It makes a lot more sense than the moronic lawsuit that Devin Nunes has brought, which is almost assuredly going to fail when it hits its head against the CDA 230. Now, Laura, you had chance, was this at CPAC that you were speaking with Josh Hawley, the senator who just 3 weeks ago has introduced legislation that would actually amend Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act?
I saw Senator Hawley walking in the hallway of CPAC, and I walked up to him and I tried to get his attention and talk to him about social media bias and introduce myself as the most banned woman in America. And for a guy who likes to talk a lot about how he's challenging big tech and social media, he hasn't exactly been very communicative with members, banned individuals like myself. And his office took my card. They said they'd reach out to me. For the record, I have not heard back from his office. And so, I know that a lot of these representatives like to showboat and they love talking about how much they're doing, but actions speak louder than words. And I don't think that it shows a lot of progress when you go on Fox News and you talk about how bad big tech is, if you're not actually going to be advocating publicly for individuals who have been banned. I would like to see some type of social media summit or some type of meeting in Congress where people like myself and Milo and Alex Jones and Gavin McInnes and others are able to testify and talk about what has been done to us. Because regardless of whether or not people like us, everyone has their own personal gripes with whoever. It's a civil rights violation. And to shut people down from banking institutions and to ban them for posting factual information and to coordinate with Islamic terrorist organizations or, in other people's cases like Antifa targeting Tucker Carlson, and for these companies to not do anything about it, that's criminal behavior. I mean, they really honestly should they should be locked up in prison. And the fact that no member of Congress has called on Dorsey and Zuckerberg to be locked up and sent to prison for committing perjury is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of these senators like to talk and talk, but when you actually go to the office and try to engage with them or email them or communicate with them, it's just deflection and they don't seem to be doing anything. Now, I could understand that he might not automatically advocate for someone who he doesn't know the full story, but for him to not even have somebody who works for him to contact you, to communicate with you, to gather your information and formulate an opinion about what they can do with your case, your information, is just, they're doing nothing over there. And we've got...
begin to tell you how many members of Congress's office I've contacted asking for a meeting or asking for them to contact me back. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, I'll leave your number with so-and-so and they'll call you back. And they just don't. I mean, I am convinced that a lot of these secretaries or receptionists, who knows what the hell they even do, but they just sit there all day in these offices for these representatives, and it's like they just answer the phone and that's it. I don't even think they pass along information because...
Well, they block the calls, is what they do.
I keep calling and I don't get a response back. And it's ridiculous to me because I'm not really asking for a lot. I'm just simply asking to meet or have a conversation with someone, or even for their communications team to pass along a legal briefing so that some of these representatives can see information that may be useful to them. But, that's Washington. It's very incompetent, and it's people on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats. They're both lazy. A lot of people get comfortable in positions of power, and they don't want to actually have, help for their constituents or help people who are, of course, legal, tax-paying American citizens. Instead, the people who are being advocated for the most in Congress recently are illegal aliens and Muslim jihadists.
That's right.
I would like anybody to who challenges that statement to show me otherwise, because I don't really ever see, banned individuals like myself or everyday Americans being invited to testify. All I see are Muslim jihadists who support Ilhan Omar and want Americans to be unsafe and are working with CARE to get rid of the terrorist watch list, and all these illegal aliens who are raping and murdering and killing innocent Americans being advocated for by these deranged politicians.
Well, we haven't seen Ocasio-Cortez go take a walk down Skid Row in Los Angeles or visit any of the homeless, possibly immigrants or maybe people born in America who are living in squalor and filth and unhealthy conditions. She's upset that an institutional sink combined with a toilet, which is a totally sanitary item that is designed to work in that way. She's more concerned that people in a detention center are having facilities like that than she is about people who are in America who are unable to even get a job and earn a wage, protect their own health, protect their families. It's quite terrible. Now, I want to ask you about Devin Nunes, Laura, because he's a conservative, pro-Trump congressman who is in a battle with Twitter over somewhat similar matters. Have you reached out to his office?
I've reached out to all of the conservatives' offices who have been vocal about text censorship in any way whatsoever. And so whenever I see a conservative speak out about social media bias, I contact their office and ask for someone to call me back, okay? And I never hear back. But the thing about Devin Nunes is, look, I understand his lawsuit. It's more of a personal lawsuit, but it's not just about Devin Nunes. And I found his lawsuit to be extremely selfish in the sense that it only addresses issues pertaining to himself and not the larger issue at hand. And I would expect that somebody like him, who has a voice, right, who has the power to, vote on or pass legislation and has access to a lot of lawmakers in Capitol Hill, to be using his lawsuit, even if it is personal, right, because I have a personal lawsuit too, to advocate for the greater cause, to advocate on behalf of the greater issue at hand, which is the censorship and the bias of conservative Americans in this country. But unfortunately, his lawsuit has really just been very self-centered, whereas if you look at what I've been doing, I use my lawsuits to go, speak at the Demand Free Speech rally like I did this weekend and speak on behalf of everyday Americans. I do interviews and I talk about people who have been silenced and banned. And I'm not a lawmaker. Right? I'm not a lawmaker. Devin Nunes has so much power, so he should use his power more wisely.
Yeah, and I've been talking about that quite a bit because it's a particularly incompetent lawsuit in as much as it's being brought by a congressional representative who, as you've just pointed out, has a power that you and I and other citizens who aren't in Congress do not have. So in addition to being a selfish, poorly pled, totally wasteful lawsuit that is virtually guaranteed to be thrown out and may in fact cost Devin Nunes quite a lot of money if he gets smacked with sanctions for bringing a lawsuit that has no basis. he's totally missing the opportunity to, as you said, to introduce some legislation. And there's this article here at the Columbia Journalism Review, The Real Costs of Devin Nunes' Lawsuit. I really haven't seen anything positive written about this lawsuit except for statements made by Devin Nunes and his lawyer, Stephen Biss, who I allege is engaged in barratry, which is a crime in Virginia. We're going to look into that. I've alleged that in my defense of a lawsuit brought by Robert David Steele, also by the same attorney as Devin Nunes. It shocks the conscience, as some might say, to think that a congressional representative would hire an attorney who has been sanctioned many times by the Virginia State Bar for his role in egregious financial fraud, sanctions that have, by the word of the Virginia Bar Association, brought this attorney's ability to practice law into question. So I wonder who is advising Devin Nunes. He's busy not taking phone calls from people like Laura Loomer, who could help him understand the real problem that's going on with First Amendment suppression by big tech giants like Twitter and Facebook. He's busy taking phone calls from lawyers who don't seem to understand what the law is. So that's a problem for me. Laura, what else is breaking that you want to share with us?
Well, the lawsuit, of course, was pretty big today. I'm just going to continue doing a lot of work to raise awareness about social media bias. I just got back from Washington, D.C. yesterday, where I spent the weekend for 4th of July weekend. I attended Trump's Salute to America, which was great. It was a great, wonderful event. Had a great time. And then I was the keynote speaker for the Demand Free Speech rally, which was also a really good event, even though the left-wing media tried to say that there was low turnout. But it definitely was a good event, and it showed how we are the peaceful side and we just want free speech. And then Antifa showed up, trying to attack people, trying to attack police officers, trying to harm conservatives. There was a guy who appeared to be some sort of neo-Nazi, maybe a member of Antifa as well, who charged the stage while I was talking. And he had a very anti-Jewish sign that said "Jews own USA." And I, of course, had to leave after I gave my talk and couldn't really go into the audience because there were some people there doing Hail Hitler salutes, right? So it's very interesting how I'm called a neo-Nazi and a white supremacist, and these Proud Boys are called Nazis. But it was the Proud Boys who removed these apparent neo-Nazis from the audience who were trying to, it looked like, attack me physically. So
wow.
It did get kind of heated there, and I had security all weekend. And so unfortunately, I couldn't really mingle with the crowd as much as I wanted to. But this is what happens when you have these tech companies falsely accusing people like myself of being dangerous and hateful. I get targeted by Nazis, actual white supremacists, Muslim terrorists, Antifa. They were threatening to shoot me in the head and throw acid on my face this weekend. Ooh. So I had to have...
In what form did they make that threat?
I had to have security with me all weekend.
Laura, how did they make that threat? Did they use social media to do that?
So there were members of Antifa who were using social media, and several news organizations, mine and Big League Politics Gateway Pundit, reported on this. And you had Antifa also having an organizational meeting in the days leading up to the event, talking about their plan of action. And of course, in wake of the Andy No attack in Portland, where you had Antifa throwing cement milkshakes and physically attacking a journalist, we had to be very careful. And so security was very tight. And these people are very violent people. They're domestic terrorists, and hopefully they're treated as such.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sorry to hear that you have to put up with that, but I must admit I'm pleased to know that you're now traveling with security. It's something that I've hoped you'd be able to have the finances for a while, but of course it's an oppressive way for you to have to go around. You can't, as you said, mingle with people who are your viewers and people who follow your work and might want to speak with you. That's really unfortunate, Laura. I'm sorry to hear that.
This is what Facebook has done to me. This is what Twitter has done with me. They've enabled terrorists and they've enabled radical leftists to physically attack me and harass me and call for me to be murdered because they enable them by giving them a platform. And when the Wall Street Journal reports that Twitter and Facebook executives met with members of CARE, that should be taken very seriously. I don't think it's acceptable for the litigation director for CARE to be calling for jihad against me on social media. I don't think that it's acceptable for, Muslims on Twitter to be able to say that they hope I'm killed or have acid thrown in my face and then I'm banned. Right.
Wow.
But this is what they enable when they give a voice to a designated Islamic terrorist organization. Why would you feel safe if the director of CARE Florida was using you as the center of the Ramadan fundraiser? And then this is the same guy who is in regular contact with a member of ISIS, literally trying to bring the ISIS bride back to America? Like, do you think that I feel safe knowing that these people who are contacting members of ISIS and Hamas are calling for Muslims to rise up against me during Ramadan, which of course a lot of people call Ramadan Bonathan because during Ramadan many Muslims work to carry out a jihad. That's why there's an increase in acts of Islamic terrorism during the months of Ramadan.
Wow, it's very disconcerting, Laura. I mean, I think we disagree slightly in that I personally feel there are moderate Muslims who don't adhere to the radical aspects of Islam, and obviously there are many radicals who do. And I agree with you that Ilhan Omar, at very least, consorts with enough of them that it's a cause for concern. There has been some more attention paid to some of the information and some of the allegations that you've raised with regard to Ilhan Omar. What do we know about that? What's going on with her, that marriage situation?
Last year when I was in Minnesota doing my investigation, you had me on, and I remember it'd be funny for you to see and find the episode that we did together, because I remember telling you, yeah, I'm in Minnesota investigating this woman who married her brother, and you didn't even believe it. And now they're acting as if it's breaking news, and you have all these fraudulent, plagiaristic journalists, right? They look like hookers who probably slept their way to the top or slept their way to the middle. Really, they're not even that talented in DC, claiming to have exclusive stories about Ilhan Omar marrying her brother and violating campaign finance laws, when in reality, some of us, while some of us were on the ground in Minnesota breaking news and investigating Ilhan Omar when she was a candidate, these other so-called journalists were on their knees, applying for jobs in DC. So I think that there needs to be some accountability in the field of journalism as well, and we need to start calling out these plagiaristic liars who try to take credit for the work of others who actually have been deplatformed and face real life consequences for breaking this information. If you recall, I was permanently banned on Twitter for calling Ilhan Omar anti-Jewish. And all the allegations that I said, whether it be her marrying her brother, her anti-Semitism, her hatred of Israel, her hatred of Jews, her hatred of Christians, her use of campaign funds to pay for a divorce for her brother, her alleged student loan and immigration fraud, tax violations, all this stuff, ties to terrorist organizations. I reported on it last year, and the media said that I was anti-Muslim and hateful, and then I was banned for it. And look who's right now.
Yeah.
I seem to be right a lot. It seems to be a pattern.
Absolutely. Laura, I mean, you're just doing incredible work. You're one of the bravest people I've ever known. I definitely hope that you remain safe and that you prevail in this lawsuit against Facebook. I'm so delighted that you're working with Larry. I don't think there's anybody that could handle this better than him, and it should be very interesting to see what happens. Of course, the suit was just filed today, so we have not yet heard a response from the lawyers. What you're saying about Ilhan Omar is remarkably similar to, what many people in the independent world of media have been saying about people like Jeffrey Epstein for so long. None of us are surprised that he's being arraigned for sex trafficking. Well, perhaps we are, only because we thought the authorities weren't going to do anything about it. But we're certainly not surprised by the allegations. I've spoken to many people who adhere to the mainstream news who are just shocked by this. And they really don't believe it until they see it on CNN or Fox.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, look, how many people during the 2015 and years of 2016 were talking about the Clintons and, all of his rides on Lolita Express. Right. Yeah, you're right. But, it's sad because you see that even independent journalists, regardless of who broke the story first. I mean, certain people take certain initiatives, and whether it's breaking a story, filing a lawsuit, preparing litigation that that leads to these greater steps, a lot of people in the independent media are being snubbed. And there's a lot of resentment, because, and I have a lot of friends who work very hard and they break a lot of big stories and they never get credit. And people may say, oh, don't be so obsessed with getting credit. But when it's your livelihood and you're not getting a paycheck from George Soros or paid by Fox News to just look cute in a dress and makeup all day while you read from a teleprompter, it's hard not to take it personally. I've had a lot of stories taken from me, a lot of work I did on the Las Vegas shooting investigation, my reports on Omar, and I feel for everybody who has their work ripped off.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of work getting ripped off, the same guy who was putting up this tweet supporting Ilhan Omar, Hamas, jihad, and all that stuff, he's one of the guys who took some of your information in Las Vegas and photographs and things like that, but we don't want to give him too much oxygen. Laura, I know your time is up. You're very busy. You got a lot to do. I want to encourage our viewers on Crowdsource the Truth to go and visit lauraloomer.us. It's very important that Laura has our support. She's bringing forward information that so many other people are unwilling or unable to do. So go to lauraloomer.us, click on support my work, and send Laura some love. Laura, it's great to have you on when we are in the same city next. I would love to sit down and do another in-person interview with you, or go knock on the door of the coroner's office or something like that. It's great to see you as always.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Laura. And thanks everybody for watching. Don't miss More Pain Tonight. We're working on something huge, 8 p.m. on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and True Pundit, patreon.com/truepundit. See everybody then. Thanks very much for watching.